Welcome back everyone, Patrick here, and moving on to another question dealing with derivatives. So if f of x has a tangent at -1 and 4 that passes through 2 and -5, then what is f of -1 and then what is f of prime of -1? So let's show on a diagram what's going on here. So this function has a tangent at -1 and 4. And -1 and 4, where is that? So x value -1, we got a y value of 4, so that's going to be like up here. Okay, so this function here has this coordinate -1 and 4, and it has a tangent at that coordinate. And then this tangent on the function is going to pass through 2 and -5. Now, where's 2 and -5? So x value of 2, got a y value of -5, so that's like down here. So this tangent here at this point is going to pass through this point. Now this point is not necessarily on this function, it's probably not, but the tangent passes through that point. So if we connect these, we got this tangent here. And so if we draw a function, we don't know what the function is going to look like, but if we draw some kind of function, maybe it looks like that. Kind of make it curve more like that. Let's say that's how the function looks like, just to give us kind of a visual representation of what's going on. It doesn't necessarily have to look like that. It could also maybe even look like this, or what we know, however the function does look, we know that it has a tangent at this point, -1 and 4, and then this tangent, it also passes through the point 2 and -5. And then this point here, we can assume that it's not going to be on the function. It may be, we don't know, but it most likely isn't. And then from this information here, what they want to know is what's f of -1, what's f of prime of -1. Well, f of -1, that's just going to be the y value of f of x at an x value of -1. And notice we know what the y value is. We were given that, right? It has this coordinate. The function has this coordinate -1 and 4. There's a tangent on that coordinate. The y value is just 4, right? So we were given that in the question. So f of -1 is equal to 4. The trickier thing to get is this f of prime of -1. Now what does this give us? What does this mean? F of prime of -1 is the slope of tangent of f of x at an x value of -1. So it's the slope of this line over here. And notice we can figure out the slope of this line because we have two coordinates on the line. So if you remember, if we have two coordinates on a line, what's the slope formula? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if we let this be x1, y1, we could let this be x2, y2, plug all of that in here. We'll have y2, so -5 minus y1, which is 4, all over x2, which is 2, minus x1, which is -1. We've got to put that in brackets right there. So if we do this, we would end up getting -9 over 2 minus -1 is like 2 plus 1, which is 3. So we'd end up getting -3. So that's the slope of the tangent, and so that's what f prime -1 is. And it makes sense that we got a negative value because notice that this line is sloping downwards. If this point was like up here, then we should get a positive slope. So that's another not foolproof way to verify that this is correct, but at least we know we're going in the right direction because we should get a negative slope, and we did get a negative slope of -3. Right? So to get this here took a little bit more work, and then this here was more so a test of your understanding that we were given, of your understanding of what this means and also your understanding of the question, how well you read it. Right? We were told that f of x has that coordinate -1 and 4, has a tangent at that coordinate. And so that means that the y value at that x value -1 is 4. And then here f prime -1 is the slope of the tangent, and we have to find the slope using this formula with that point and that other point that we were given.